Critics claimed the couple had crossed a sacred line by airing internal disputes before a global audience while still carrying royal titles. Supporters called it courageous truth-telling. For the institution itself, it was chaos. In constitutional terms, royals exist as symbols of national unity, figures meant to rise above politics. When that symbol becomes divisive, the crown's moral authority begins to erode. Senior peers cite this as a foundation for any future legislative review, that the Sussex saga has transformed what should be apolitical heritage into partisan spectacle. If the Oprah interview cracked a monarchy's public facade, the Netflix series Harry and Meghan smashed it entirely. Released in late 2022, the 6-part documentary billed itself as an intimate chronicle of trauma and self-discovery. In practice, it became a global courtroom where the royal family stood accused and could not reply. For the first time, the British public saw palace corridors through the cinematic lens of California Confession. Viewers expecting reconciliation instead receive a narrative of grievance. Meghan describing herself as silenced, Harry portraying the press as predatory, and both suggesting the institution valued reputation over well-being. The series trended worldwide, but in Britain, the reaction was ferocious. Even moderate commentators called it a glossy declaration of war. Within days, parliamentary inboxes filled with complaints from constituents demanding that the couple cease using royal titles for commercial ventures. By early 2023, several lords publicly questioned whether continuing to style themselves as Duke and Duchess while producing a profit-driven docuseries amounted to misuse of honors. Lord Kilcloony went on record declaring that no member of the royal family should monetize titles that belong to the crown, not the individual. At the heart of the Netflix controversy lies the issue of commercialization. The opening credits of Harry and Meghan introduced them by full titles. Promotion material declared, "The Duke and Duchess of Sussex tell their story." To peers steeped in constitutional etiquette, that phrasing was incendiary. In their eyes, the Sussexes had turned symbols of state into marketing assets. Economists who study media branding estimated that the Royal Association added tens of millions of dollars to the couple's market value in streaming and publishing contracts. To many within Britain's political class, that looked less like self-expression and more like exploitation. The House of Lords Communications Committee, though not formally investigating, held informal discussions about whether existing guidelines on the use of royal designations were adequate for the digital age. Several members argued that the boundary between personal storytelling and commercial endorsement had effectively vanished. Public opinion hardened quickly. The Daily Mail and Telegraph ran front-page polls showing over 60% of respondents believed the Sussexes should be stripped of their titles. Even left-leaning outlets that once defended Meghan criticized the series as performative victimhood. The tone of national debate shifted from sympathy to exhaustion. Across pubs, call-in radio shows, and social media threads, the refrain became familiar. If you hate the monarchy, stop using its titles. The sentiment, half anger, half common sense, gave political cover to peers considering a symbolic petition. They could frame it not as personal vengeance, but as public duty, aligning themselves with majority opinion that the institution must safeguard its integrity. Behind the scenes, senior aides in both Downing Street and Buckingham Palace reportedly voiced concern that the Sussex narrative was overshadowing the new reign of King Charles III. The monarchy's soft power depends on global perception, and every headline about Netflix drama diluted the gravitas of a sovereign seeking stability. Foreign correspondents covering the series noted the irony. Britain, once a master of global image-making, had lost control of its own story. That loss of narrative control is precisely what alarms constitutional conservatives. The monarchy's authority rests not solely on law but on myth, on a perception of unity, service, and restraint. When that myth becomes content for streaming platforms, the institution's mystique begins to evaporate. The peers who speak a petition see themselves as guardians of that mystique, not reactionaries, but preservationists. To Meghan's critics, the Netflix project confirmed their worst suspicions, that she viewed royalty as a platform for personal storytelling rather than public service. To her supporters, it was a long overdue reclamation of voice from a hostile press. Yet even sympathetic analysts concede that the documentary blurred the line between private catharsis and public attack. Each revelation sparked counter-revelations. Every defense triggered new controversy. By the end of its run, the series had achieved something extraordinary. It united Britain's political class, the tabloids, and even some Republican critics in rare consensus that the monarchy had never appeared more vulnerable to cultural trivialization. For years, the British establishment has attempted, sometimes with visible desperation, to move beyond the never-ending Sussex saga. Yet every new week seems to draw Buckingham Palace Parliament and the press right back into the same gravitational orbit of controversy. Westminster is once again buzzing with reports that peers are debating whether a formal petition should be introduced to reconsider the titles and privileges of the Duchess of Sussex. Whether this petition carries any legislative power or remains purely symbolic, its very discussion has reopened a deep cultural fault line that runs to the core of Britain's constitutional monarchy. It now stands as a clash between two competing visions of what royalty should represent in the 21st century: heritage versus celebrity, duty versus autonomy, service versus self-expression. The spectacle has become almost cinematic. What was once celebrated as a modern fairy tale that could rejuvenate the monarchy is transformed into a political drama that refuses to end. Meghan Markle's entry into the royal family, once hailed as a breath of fresh air, has evolved into an unending public soap opera. Inside the Lord's wood-paneled chamber, where crimson benches have witnessed centuries of empire, reform, and crisis, some peers now whisper the unthinkable, that the crown's global credibility cannot be rebuilt until the Sussex question is finally settled. The symbolism is striking. The upper house of Parliament, an institution traditionally occupied with trade bills and foreign policy, has become the latest stage for Britain's longest-running cultural drama. Commentators describe it as constitutional theater. The public calls it justice long overdue. Either way, the debate over Meghan's titles has moved far beyond gossip. It has become a referendum on how far modern royals may go in challenging the very institution that defines them. When Meghan Markle married Prince Harry in May 2018, Britain collectively exhaled. The wedding felt like a national rebrand. The ancient monarchy embracing diversity, a Hollywood actress becoming a duchess in a ceremony watched by nearly 2 billion people. For one brief moment, the country believed it had found harmony between tradition and modernity. But that harmony shattered almost instantly. Within months, a series of staff departures from Kensington Palace fueled headlines of bullying, rivalry, and dueling duchesses. The tabloids sharpened their knives. Social media divided into tribes. Supporters saw Meghan as a victim of racism and rigid hierarchy. Critics viewed her as an ambitious outsider exploiting royal privilege. What could have been a bridge between cultures became a battleground. By the time the couple announced their withdrawal from royal duties in January 2020, the divide had deepened into something far more ideological. Polling data since then has painted a consistent picture. Roughly 2/3 of Britons believe Meghan has damaged the monarchy's reputation. Even among younger voters who once admired her, sympathy has waned. The YouGov tracker of royal favorability routinely places the Duchess near the bottom of the list, below minor royals who never grant interviews. To defenders of tradition within the Lords, these numbers are not trivial. The monarchy's survival depends on public consent. When that consent begins to erode, peers grow anxious about constitutional legitimacy itself. Thus, the talk of a petition is not simply punitive. It is protective. To them, Meghan's behavior represents an existential threat to the monarchy's delicate contract with the nation, privilege in exchange for discretion and duty. The controversy now divides not only social classes, but generations. Progressive commentators in the United States cast Meghan as a whistleblower taking on an outdated institution. British constitutionalists see her as the embodiment of imported celebrity culture, one that confuses publicity with purpose. The tension is as cultural as it is political, a clash between the quiet stoicism Britain values and the confessional individualism America exports. Inside Westminster, this division manifests in uneasy debates. Some peers fear that public outrage has grown so fierce that silence might be interpreted as complicity. Others warn that addressing the issue risks dragging the Lords into the tabloid arena. Yet both sides concede one undeniable truth. No royal figure since Edward VIII has divided Britain as sharply as Meghan Markle. Every new media appearance by the Sussexes reopens a wound. The Oprah Winfrey interview of 2021, viewed by nearly 50 million people worldwide, detonated allegations of racism and emotional neglect within the royal household.